Hello?
There?
Yes.
Okay, there's a weird background noise. Oh, are you working on the computer?
I was just stepping into
Oh, okay.
a car.
It's probably just you typing then.
Okay. And the wind was blowing.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, let me just do the intro and then we'll be started, okay?
Sounds good, thanks.
All right. Welcome back to Turning the Tide. This is Candace Salima coming at you from the heart of the Rocky Mountains. And today, for our second hour, we have a security specialist named Jeffrey Denning. Just to run a quick bio, he is a former SWAT team leader. He is also a private security contractor, or he was, a private security contractor with the State Department in Israel for the U.S.-led Road to Mideast Peace. He escorted U.S. diplomats into the West Bank and Gaza Strip, which couldn't have been easy, where a convoy was attached and 3 colleagues were killed. He was an undercover Federal Air Marshall, and he is the sole source contractor for a classified contract with a U.S. government customer, non-commissioned and commissioned Army officer, Iraqi War Vet, tactics and firearms instructor, and founder of Warrior SOS. He also has a master's in military special operations with an emphasis in terrorism and a bachelor's in law enforcement administration. He is an FBI-trained crisis negotiator and has taken attended the Advanced SWAT school with the LAPD. My goodness, Jeff, that is quite the credentials there. Welcome to Turning the Tide.
Thank you so much, Candace. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, we've got a lot going on in the world today, so before we move on to what's going on in Israel, I'm hoping that you're up on what happened in the last couple of days with Benjamin Netanyahu wanting to do a preemptive strike on Iran and what's going on there. So because you are so conversant with what the security issues are and terrorism and everything that's going on, I want to cover that when we're done talking about your foundation, Warrior SOS. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. I started up Warrior SOS last year in 2010 in an effort to help a family member who had been two-time Iraqi War Vet who had been diagnosed with brain cancer. And I thought, there's been several people asking for help and several warriors within law enforcement and a lot of veterans asking for some additional training and so forth. So I thought, I might as well put on some classes and donate some money. Well, as I started thinking about how to go about doing that, I had a good friend of mine, also an Iraqi War Vet and a police officer who reached out to me for help, the kind of an SOS, an international distress signal. And he asked for help, and I thought, hey, you know what, we need to get back and see if he's doing okay. What did he experience over the last 7 years of his life that had totally transformed everything he is? And he had just a terrible experience over in Iraq. At one moment he was getting shot at and taking all kinds of fire and returning fire. And his wife was pregnant at the time and back home in America. And he received a Red Cross message to his Marine Corps unit. And the next thing you know, he's being driven back down from, in the middle of a war zone, accompanied by a couple of bodies and body bags in a Humvee, drive back down to Kuwait, put on a plane, and brought back home to America. So he went from 100 miles an hour to a dead stop, and trying to transition back into some normalcy is something that a lot of warriors struggle with. So Warrior SOS has morphed a little bit from helping people and putting on firearms training programs for law enforcement and others as well, and then just donating that money to help the community. But also I run a blog where I recently just posted an interview with a man named Tom Spooner of Invictus Alliance Group, and he is a Tier 1 Special Operations Warrior, and he agreed to talk about his post-traumatic stress and his traumatic brain injury. It's just a phenomenal interview. So I highly recommend that everybody take a look at that.
Yeah, I did get a chance to read that, Jeff, and what a man, and what an experience he's had. And I wonder if Americans truly begin to understand the price, the cost of what our soldiers do. And that's one of the things I like about Warrior SOS, is because we are able to see firsthand exactly what that price is. Can you tell me how things are going with the foundation? Have you been able to continue raising money and helping other soldiers, stuff like that?
Yeah, actually, it's been really a blessing. I just taught a law enforcement course just a couple days ago. Last week actually, and the chief of police. I told him, look, Chief, I'm gonna give you the training from the experience I have and stuff, and maybe. He was interested in the training. We trained his department and the firearms instructors that he has on his department, and did it at a reduced cost. A lot of law enforcement agencies are having problems with the budget because of the economic downturn and so forth. So we did it at a reduced cost, and I said, hey, here's what I'd like you to do for me, Chief. I said, any of your officers who, when they go around, if they can find a family who's down on their luck, and out of all people, police officers know who's been naughty and who's been nice. And I said, what we're going to do is I'm just going to take the money that you pay us in the foundation from the training and go ahead and donate it back to the community and buy somebody, a family who's down on their luck, and help donate for their Christmas. And that kind of all stemmed out why when I was a police officer in Dallas, Texas, there was a terrible modern-day Mr. Grinch that came and burglarized a family in a destitute part of South Dallas where I worked.
Oh,
and they took all the Christmas presents. And so this good police officer, he got all the stuff he needed for the report, and then he started asking for more information. And the stuff that he needed for the report, he got. But then he asked, "Hey, what toy exactly was it? Where did you buy it? What are the kids' names?" And he went out and bought and wrapped Christmas presents and replaced everything. And he didn't want anybody to know about it, but word kind of spread among the department there in the substation where I work. And I thought, well, that's a hero to me. I think too often that warriors, whether those in security, law enforcement, especially our veterans, they see things and experience things that are terrible and traumatic. And one of the blessings of being able to experience some of those, if you want to call it that, is that you learn to appreciate and help and serve and love and bless others, and you can really start to have some compassion. And so, especially when it's violence and difficult times on children. So that's our goal right now, from now to the end of the Christmas season, and trying to get things up and running with that end of the scope. But it's interesting, some of the challenges that the families face too. It's often so overlooked of the stress that a spouse goes through or that children go through from service members who are deployed. A lot of them in law enforcement community, of course, but a lot of them who are active duty, and then you have the reservists and you have the National Guard. So many deployments, it's unreal. In fact, in this already mentioned interview here I just did, Tom Spooner, he had been from September 2001 until he retired in 2010. For 10 years, he spent over 40 months in direct combat, and he was gone so often from his house. And you think, well, how does a family deal with that? All the stresses and the pressures of not having your loved one there. And how do you deal with that? I was able to speak with a good friend of mine, well, his wife. He had died, actually, 4 years ago tomorrow. He died in Iraq, and we were really close. So I called and spoke with his wife, and they have a little daughter, and you just think, hey, how are you holding up? How are things going? And, these things that I think so often we tend to forget, especially if we're not close to a military installation, we don't live close next to one, or if we don't even know anybody in the military or military service, then we kind of tend to forget we're even at war.
Well, and Jeff, let me ask this. Is this something that Warrior SOS also deals with, the loved ones that are left behind?
I only heard the left behind part. I'm sorry. Say that again, Candace.
Oh, I apologize. What I wanted to know was, is this something that Warrior SOS also does, is help with those who are left behind, or this is just a personal experience you've had?
Well, it's to start up a nonprofit organization like Warrior SOS, you have to have, according to the laws, where we're set up, we have to have three officers. So we have 3 officers, but in essence, we're kind of small. So do I keep in contact with the widows that I know of, the dear friends? Yes, absolutely, I do, and I've even started. I've offered several awards in their honor and named it for Officer Brian Jackson of the Dallas Police Department, who was shot and killed. He and I went through the academy together, and I keep in touch with his wife and Staff Sergeant Johnny Lindy. I offer an award there, and I give it to officers or combat veterans and police officers both, who are really, really struggling. In fact, one of the police officers, one of the military reservists that I gave that I actually am going to give an award to here tomorrow or the next day, and I had a plaque made up. He was on convoy, and he was sitting in a gunner in a turret, which is the hatch or the top portion of the Humvee. And so he's sitting in a turret on convoy, and some of his best friends that he had been in the unit with and deployed with to Afghanistan for so long, an IED exploded, and the Humvee blew up, and some of the injured were able to jump out of the vehicle. Of course, they were on fire, and this good soldier who is suffering from nightmares and insomnia and a lot of trials like that, he knew he had to stay up on the gun in case they started taking small arms fire. But at the same time, he watched his friends burn to death and get blown up. And so those kind of traumatic experiences are relived often in the mind, and sometimes they're recalled. The traumatic events are recalled from smell, which is one of the most powerful of our senses. Recall these memories, or sometimes they manifest themselves in irritability and anger, or depression or anxiety. And so any of these individuals who have experienced this, I think it's kind of a normal reaction, really, to abnormal circumstances, or at least that's what the psychologists say. But they need to go get help, and usually talking to somebody who can understand would be a blessing and a benefit. In fact, I had one former Marine come and talk to me not too long ago after we posted something on the blog about J.P. Vlant, who was really courageous, and he decided to go and be interviewed by the Stars and Stripes, the military newspaper, and talk about his post-traumatic stress. So after he posted it on our blog and went up on Facebook, then I got a phone call. Hey, you have time to talk? Let's talk. And this good young Marine veteran kind of outlines here some of the problems I've been facing, some of the struggles I've been having, and encourage him just, hey, let's go get help. There's a lot of things, a lot of services out there. I think a lot of people are embarrassed to go to the vet center or to any other program or just talk to somebody because it kind of identifies that, hey, gosh, I got something wrong, or I have a problem or a weakness. And yeah, it could be a struggle. Like I interviewed several of the Special Forces warriors and a Navy SEAL and some of the other people on our Warrior SOS blog. Even the one of the lead mountaineers and lead guides for soldiers to the summit. You know, when all these individuals are facing troubles and trials, you need to turn to somebody for help. And I see it very often where a lot of people, even if they're not that religious, tend to turn to God for help. As they say, there's no such thing as atheists in foxholes, but turning to God helps. There's another individual who I'll call Mike. He told me a couple of things that he did. He was in a couple of firefights. They were taking automatic machine gun fire, and him and another individual flanked and shot back. And once they got up close, they saw that it was just a young kid, about 12 to 14 years old, a young Iraqi kid.
Oh,
and
no.
He looked at him, and it reminded him of his own sons. It was traumatic. Later on in his deployment, there was an individual who wasn't going to stop at the gate, who was kind of giving all the indicators of a suicide bomber, and he walked and he wouldn't stop and he wouldn't take the commands. So this Army warrior drew his pistol and shot him right in the head. And as he told me these experiences, he had this, the 1,000-yard stare, so to speak. Or
yes. Can you explain to people what that is, Jeff, if you don't mind? A lot of people don't know what the 1,000-yard stare is. Could you explain to them what that is and what it is indicative of?
Sure. When you have painful memories and you're trying to recall them or you think about them, and sometimes try to push them away, those kind of memories, when they come up, it brings back guilt, fear, depression, all the horrible, terrible things that can be related by somebody who's experienced battle or even being in the war zone and hasn't experienced up close and personal battle. But it's a stress that is ongoing for months and weeks and faced in that, that fight or flight or even freeze, that pressure, that survival instinct that occurs in each human being. And once you're recalling some of those memories, whether it's, even going to talk about them to get help or just talking to friends or trying to educate yourself, sometimes you recall some of those, the painful memories. And when that comes up, then it's like holding a giant magnifying glass over every terrible, horrible, painful experience and having all those things magnified to the nth. And it can be very traumatic for some individuals. In fact, another individual, a police officer, who went overseas with the reserve, told me not too long ago about the great fear that he felt when he was over in Iraq. He said that there was a car bomb had just gone off. He was totally scared. There was another vehicle approaching. Some people shot at it, and the vehicle was hit, and it swerved over and smashed into a pole. And he said, I was totally scared. He said, I ran up with the shotgun and shot them both in the face. And then, then we had to clear some houses right there. We go into a house with two people. You go in, you turn in one room, and a guy with an AK ready to shoot him, he shoots him. And another guy goes down in the hall, and they get into shooting. And all of these experiences, although we're shielded a lot and we don't want to talk about it, in fact, even talking about it, it probably makes some people feel pretty irate or thinking, what are we even doing in war? Or regardless of all this, these guys are the heroes, and they're facing and experiencing and feeling things so that you and I don't have to. And it's their choice to do it. And as Tom Spooner just said, he said, I thank God no one has to experience those things. Well, but it was my choice.
Right. And that's the thing that is so amazing to me about our soldiers here in America, is that they are willing to go and face those things so that children in America can sleep at night. I interviewed a former mayor of Shiloh, Israel, a few weeks ago, and he talked about how they get 1,000 terrorist hits a year there in that town, and that all the children have PTSD, every single one of them, and I'm sure some of the parents do too, and they have a foundation there that deals specifically with the PTSD. That's why American soldiers go do what they do, so that American children don't suffer that.
Sure. You know, it's interesting, Candace, you mentioned Israel and some of the things they're facing now with maybe doing some preemptive strikes or going in and preemptively stopping a lot of the terrorism. The difference that I experienced when I lived in Israel and worked in Israel and the West Bank and the Gaza Strip as a security contractor with the State Department, the thing I experienced and saw is here's Israel. It's a tiny little state or country surrounded by countries who hate and loathe them. And terrorists come in and attack somebody, and so you meet people on the street who've been hit by shrapnel in their own backyards. And if they haven't been hit or hurt or felt an explosion themselves, they know somebody who has. And so the dynamics of something like that happening in America would be like having everybody in America be at Lower Manhattan on 9/11. Some of these individuals, the Israelis, they see it and they feel it and they live it day to day. And they remember some of the fears that they have and possess. One of the most helpless feelings you can totally experience is to not to be able to do anything when your friends get killed in a roadside bomb, or when you're taking mortar fire, or when you're surrounded by an enemy and you're outnumbered. What do you do? And so that feeling of helplessness brings on also a feeling of peril and a feeling of fear. And so you can see, if you look at it from Benjamin Netanyahu's perspective, to say, well, shoot, we don't want to get wiped off the face of the map like the Iranian president has said in the past.
Has said over and over and over in the past. I mean, he's not just said it once. Right.
And so, you know, it's a different thing when you experience and face the fear firsthand. If you don't want to have it happen again and again and again, and you know, to be able to raise up and to say, guess what? I'm going to defend my land. I'm going to defend my wife and my children and my family, and not just them, but all of the people, all of my people. I'm going to defend them. That's, to me, that's the essence, that selfless service and that courage of American soldier and the Marine and the Airman and everybody. And you got people in law enforcement, anybody willing to yield the sword of justice, so to speak, to stand up in defense for what's right and what's honorable and what's decent and what's good, so you can maintain your freedoms.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The reason I wanted to have you on, Jeff, is because of the work that you're doing with Warrior SOS and the mission that you have to educate the American people about what our soldiers go through. Now, if you don't mind, you brought up Israel. Let's move to Israel real quick. With Iran moving their weapons up into the mountains, and they managed to do a missile test that reached Israel. And so Benjamin Netanyahu is looking at a preemptive strike. And as you said, it is his job to protect Israel. It's his job to watch out for Israel. It's not his job to watch out for Iran or Palestine or anywhere else, just Israel. And so he and Ehud Barak are in agreement that needs to happen. They are putting it before the Knesset in the next few days, I think. And this is what I wanted to know. If it comes down, Israel is saying that they will tip their weapons with, I guess, whatever it is that makes a nuclear bomb so powerful, and when they fire them at Iran. Tell me what happens if it comes to that, Israel versus Iran. Who would emerge the winner in a war between those two?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question.
I know.
I think it could, but considering the totality of circumstances and taking into account, as somebody who believes in the Bible and believes in the, Israel and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and so forth, you think, and looking forward to say, hey, where's the last days and the battle's going to be? It's the great Armageddon, from the Book of Revelations and so forth. So you can take it from that aspect on one hand. On the other hand, we just talk about, hey, what's happened in Israel over the last several years. So we know that they had previously preempted and attacked nuclear sites in Iran. They've done it. They've flown sorties and bombed those places. So what's going to happen? Rising and growing tensions will continue to happen. What kind of things are they using? All of this, of course, is open source, and I'm not revealing or saying anything that I shouldn't be, but always is good to throw in that disclaimer. But some of the tools that they're going to use to their disposal is cyber warfare. You can try to even develop codes or things that will shut down their nuclear program via computer, everything from that to actual, shooting of missiles or flying sorties to, the Mossad or Shin Bet or whoever else they're going in to take out their leaders or to, attack, kill, assassinate, targeted killings. They're known well for it, Israel is.
They really are, and they don't have to go to an all-out armed battle war, right? They can do all the things that you are talking about, and do.
Well, sure, but there's no one's to know what's going to happen. Are they going to be prepared for it? Do they have plans to do it? You betcha they do, without a doubt. And America does too. The American generals, they say, okay, if this happens, what are we going to do? Well, let's lay out the plans. So we're prepared to take offensive or to initiate that strike should the table turn and we have to go that route. So, this, they call it the work of death. In the work of death, a phrase that is actually pointed out in the Declaration of Independence, and elsewhere. You say, hey, here's the work of death. What is it, and how has it worked? Well, it's all calculated and intelligent, and you have warriors at every single level and operating to strategically and tactically and defend themselves and their country and their way of life. And it's really just a dark and sad thing if you take it from one point of view, because we're human on human conflict, and it's sad. But people need to defend themselves, and they're justified to do so. Of course,
absolutely. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if you go into justification or just war, the justum bello, and we talk about Hugo Grotius and St. Augustine and many other people are talking about just war, what's right and what's not right, when can you defend, and how should you attack or how should you fight a war. That's been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries, the philosophies of what is just and what is right. The bottom line is it would just be nice if everybody could get along, but there are bullies, there are terrorists, and there are people that need to be stopped.
Yes, and there always will be. Jeff, we need to go to a break, but when we come back, you alluded to that America has plans as well if this comes down to what it looks like it's coming down to between Israel and Iran. And that's the next part I want to talk about, is how it affects us in the U.S. Ahmadinejad has not been shy about saying he wants to take both Israel and the U.S. off the face of the map. Israel is easier for him to do than the U.S. Well, I don't know. He's got Benjamin Netanyahu in the way, and he's a pretty tough old bird. But that's what I want to talk about when we come back from the break. So we're going to have about 2.5, 3 minutes if you want to stretch your legs, and then we'll be back, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.